Oh, all right, everybody. Another podcast of the Laundry Boss. Today we have Jeremy from Paystri. He's going to be a guest today. And as many of you guys already know, we have Jim Love, Chief Revenue Officer from Laundry Boss. Today we want to talk about is EBT, but from a payment processor perspective. So Jeremy's going to actually talk to us about what is EBT from. If you want to offer EBT, how do you offer EBT? Jeremy, so if you can, give us a quick background about yourself, how you got into the industry before we actually dive into EBT payments.
Well, let me
Thanks.
let me let me interject there for a second. After our last podcast and a discussion with V, as part of that Laundry Gurus podcast, we talked about some things specific to the industry, and some questions were brought up that made me want to reach out to Jeremy Straley from Paystri to get into some of the depths and details. So I'm going to let Jeremy introduce himself. From a Laundry Boss perspective, we work with Paystri as our processor on the back end. They were key to helping us be able to implement EBT into our system. And with that, I'm going to let Jeremy introduce himself and Paystri.
All right. Thanks, Jim and Daniel. Yeah. So I'm Jeremy Straley. I've been in the payments industry since 2008. So going on 18 years now. Before that, I came from a family of dry cleaners. So I have some cleaning industry experience, maybe not in the laundromat space, but definitely around cleaners. And those relationships that I built over the years led me to relationships with the guys at Laundry Boss.
Jeremy's our subject matter expert that when we get into depth and detail and we talk to our customers about specifically things around that payment space, Jeremy's a resource that we use frequently to allow us to stay in our lane while at the same time bringing that resource that has the depth and detail to get into the weeds on specifics. So today's topic is, again, it's about EBT in the laundromat space, in the coin vend self-service space. So I think that, Daniel, you as a laundromat owner and from running a laundromat business, we've had many discussions about what is EBT and what does it mean to a laundromat owner, and what should people's expectations should be. And I think that'd be a great thing for you to discuss as a general topic to begin the discussion.
Yeah, for sure. So, when I got to the laundry business, I was very fresh. I was very new to it. I come from a technology background. Getting to the brick and mortar business, I had no idea what EBT really meant per se. Like as a broad term, I knew what EBT was, but from a business owner perspective, I hadn't thought about it too much. At my laundromat that we had, the first red light or green light of like, hey, should we start offering EBT came on. I literally had a McDonald's right across the street from me, and they put a big sign that says now offering EBT at the McDonald's. Right. So then the red light, the green light came on for me. It was like, hey, should I be offering EBT? Is that something we should be considering? And then I started seeing other laundromats start offering EBT. So, Jeremy, if you can talk us through, like, first, what is EBT? Like from a business owner's perspective, there's SNAP, there's TAM, all these other things that we have to consider. Can you kind of give us a framework what all those are and what laundromat owners should be thinking about before they even think about offering, or if they should offer it?
Yeah. Thanks, Danny. EBT, electronic benefits. So they're a debit card that's loaded by the government, state and federal. Now, as you mentioned, SNAP and TAMP, there's two different types of benefits, and you have to apply to these benefits separately to receive them. So SNAP benefits are food only benefits, and only limited food items are even acceptable through those SNAP benefits. So if you think that if somebody has a SNAP card, but they don't have TANF, TANF, which stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, then it wouldn't work if they were SNAP only users. So consider they get issued a debit card, and it can have both balances on there. So think of it as one card with two different bank accounts tied to it, if you would. And you need, or the user, the card holder, has to have TANF benefits enabled for it to be used for anything other than food. Now, TANF has very loose regulations around how it's accepted, or what you can purchase rather than with your TANF benefits rather than SNAP. It's just like a bank account. You can pretty much spend your debit card from Bank of America anywhere for any amount as long as you have funds available. So TANF is available. If you have TANF, we can allow a dry cleaner to accept TANF. as long as they have a PIN-debit enabled device, because stamps like debit cards have PIN, and they will not do a swipe only or tap only. As you see in a debit card world, sometimes you can just run the debit card and not have to enter your PIN. Other times you have to enter your PIN to receive whatever you're purchasing, right? So TAMP cards 100% require a PIN device. So if you're thinking about accepting EBT in your laundromat, you must have a software that has a PIN-debit enabled device with it, which we're able to get Laundry Boss squared away with the right devices so that we can, in fact, accept TAMP EBT. But again, they have to have the TAMP enablement for it to work. When it comes to accepting EBT in your laundromat, you must be aware that there are two different types of EBT out there. Now, EBT are electronic benefits that are loaded on a debit card, right? Now, the federal and local state governments are the ones who issue and load the funds onto those cards on a monthly basis. But there are two different types. Daniel, earlier you mentioned SNAP and TAMP. So SNAP is food only. You can only use SNAP if you're purchasing food, right? And even the food types that you're purchasing are limited now. So you can't buy Twinkies and Ho-Hos with SNAP cards, for example. Now, TAMP stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And that is a pure cash transaction, if you will, just like if you were to use a debit card issued by your bank and tied directly to your bank account. So you must have funds, of course, for that transaction to process, but you can use TAMP for laundromat purchases, whether it's running the machines or even soaps and the other things that you may need, and the fabric softeners that you might purchase over the counter at that laundromat. The one thing that you must have to accept those cards, though, is a PIN-debit enabled device. So whatever platform you're using, even if they might have regular card readers that are tap to pay or swipe to pay, if it doesn't have a PIN capability, then those cards will not process. You'll fail every time or decline because you're not passing that additional information through.
So Jeremy, when you and I first had this conversation, we're talking about laundromat owners. You gave me a number that I've repeated in the Laundry Gurus podcast, and I said that 50% of transactions in laundromats in that self-serve space fail when people go to use their EBT cards. And we in preparing for our discussion, we were talking about the appropriateness of EBT for, and I'm going to talk about two different classes. One is attended laundromats and unattended. And I think you had some great insight into that and some advice for laundromat owners that I would definitely like you to share.
Yeah. So again, the 50% failure rate, it primarily just comes from your consumer education, right? The people in your laundromats need to know if they have SNAP or TAMP enabled. And you do not automatically get one with the other when you apply for these benefits. So you have to have at least TAMP to be able to run that transaction again in the laundromat. So I would highly recommend that you have clear signage that says something along the lines of TANF benefits and EBT only, SNAP not accepted, right? So there's a clear understanding before they try to start the transaction in the first place. And of course, if you're an attended laundromat, then make sure that your attendants are trained and understand the difference so that they can assist your clients when they come in.
Yeah, I like that, and that's great insight. And in preparation for our discussion today, I asked you to do a little bit of homework, and that we of course won't share any names, but I would like to talk anecdotally about some of the laundromat owners out there that have already deployed with us the EBT readers, and sort of give people an expectation about what that should look like or could look like for them, because I don't know if the expectation is going to meet reality. So the first one that we went and looked at was a Laundry Boss customer that just finished up about their first month worth of transactions. This laundromat has multiple, they do wash, dry, fold, they do coin vend self-service, but I want to do this as a percentage of their coin vend self-service. And this was not the coin. right? This was not the coin. This was just the transactions that otherwise was being run through credit cards, that it was $3,032 in total transactions that Kate was coming through credit cards. And of that, it was only $48.36 worth of EBT transactions. That only represented 1.6% of that total. Now, Daniel has some definite opinions about this that, of course, I would like him to share.
My always approach is whenever you release a feature, doesn't matter what type of business you do, or even in the case of a laundromat, what kind of service you offers, have you done the proper marketing and promotions, and have you educated the customer adequately? Because if something, if you present a new feature such as EBT, but you haven't educated the customer, it is almost, it may fail, and it's not because there's not enough customers who are interested in using it. Is you haven't done a good job of marketing and educating your customers, and put a big sign that says, "Hey, EBT is now available." Right? Sometimes that's just all you need. So that would be my first question. And 30 days of data is very, still new, especially from a laundromat perspective. In my experience, anytime when you present anything new to your customers, it takes about 90 days or so, because that's the influx of new customers that come in, the word of mouth that people start sharing. Hey, I know this laundromat now offers this. This laundromat has lower prices. Everybody starts talking. It takes about 90 days for the communication to circulate in the community. But yeah, I would like to kind of see further numbers, Jeremy, if you can talk about, hey, is this normal, or would you expect something a bit more at a laundromat?
I believe that it will grow over time, but I don't believe it's going to become a significant value or a significant dollar amount, of their additional sales. And yes, I'm eagerly awaiting what it looks like after 90 days, and, and then half a year, 6 months, and a year later. But it's still not a significant driver of revenue. There's another location in densely populated area of New Jersey that we did a survey on as well. Now, they had 1,747 transaction for over $33,000 in this particular look, and they've had EBT for a significant period of time. So we can expect that the ramp has leveled, right? Their volume was still 5 transactions on average for a rolling 3-month period. So extremely low, so you ask yourself, is the additional cost of equipment, is the additional time invested worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze on it, for me? Now, every market's a little different, right? You may have more rural area. You may be closer to the demographic that's going to have more, a wider distribution of TAMP funds. And then in that case, it could definitely go to a higher percentage. But in my experience, what I'm seeing on average for EBT is just a very small percentage of the overall transactions.
I mean, should a unattended store ever have EBT there in the store when there's a 50% decline rate because TAM funds are not on those cards?
That's right, Jim. So attended versus unattended. When you have attended, you have people who can help, who can explain very clearly the difference between SNAP and TAMP, help the customers when it comes to how to actually use the device, which it's not much different than paying for gas at the pump at a gas station. But however, whatever the case may be, you're attending, you have somebody on site. In an unattended environment, if the person has a hard time reading or misses the signage that you may have put up that explains the difference between TAMP and SNAP and the types of transactions that are accepted, the decline rate is going to increase significantly. And when that decline rate increases, so does your customer experience and your customer satisfaction, right? So, with that being said, you don't have someone there to help them when they experience a decline. So, that frustration can come out in multiple ways, and I'm sure every operator has experienced some sort of vandalism, or, people aren't being respectful of their place of business and the equipment in it. This is just something that could play out in a negative way.
Yeah. So what I like to say is, in that case, the best case scenario is you get a bad review, right? That person saw the EBT there. They made a point to come over. They loaded 3 machines. They go over to the EBT kiosk. They're ready to pay, and then they scan their card and it's declined. And you can imagine how frustrated someone would be. And if you're an unattended store with no one there to explain why that happened, then it's just the equipment that failed. So I guess the discussion that we had was around that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you were saying that unattended stores that, there's no way that this could really work for them, or that you'd want to take that level of risk. Again, the best case, you get a bad review. The worst case is you have a person that acts out while they're in the store. But then that brings us over to an attended store. But then you're talking a lot about education. Let's talk about what your recommendation was and what we do to try to educate those customers from a store owner's perspective about the TANF program and the need for funding on that.
We developed a little PDF, super easy to print out, on frequently asked questions around EBT. And it's a great resource for owners and their attendants to be able to draw back on. It's it really is simple at the end of the day, identifying the difference between TAMP and SNAP. But by just looking at one of those cards, you wouldn't know the difference. Really, only the card holder would know what they have. And the card holder has websites they can log into and ways to check their balances so they would know what they have available. But from a laundromat perspective, we still don't know what kind of card we're getting till the transaction approves or declines. So we just need to make sure that now every time we set up a Laundry Boss client, we do enable them to accept EBT. So even if you have it and you don't use it, there's really no additional costs on that transaction or, on the service. But when it's enabled with the right card reader, with the PIN-debit capability, then it's automatically able to turn on. So anybody who's with us who wanted to add it, sure, no problem. We just need to get the right device out there to them. But again, that education resource will help them and their attendants be able to help their customers when the time comes.
In our preparation for this call, you mentioned something. I liked it because if you took a look at it just by sheer revenue, and that was your only litmus test for whether you did it, you might decide as an owner that you weren't going to go down the EBT route. But I liked the way you discussed it before about the overall value to the laundromat owner. So could you go into a little bit of that for us?
Yeah, the real benefit of accepting EBT in your laundromat isn't just the revenue, the additional revenue you drive. And as all of us are in business and we're here to result a profit, right? But one thing you do when you add EBT is you do attract underserved families. It helps you to build loyalty for the customers that you have that do have TAMP capability. It can help fill those slower hours in the store. And then also it just differentiates yourself from the other laundromats down the block. So I think there's still value in having EBT and providing it to your client base. But let's just not think that this is going to be the next golden goose that's going to take your laundromat to the next level.
Yeah, at Laundry Boss, we always talk about more ways to pay equals more money. And, I see EBT as another, like you said, another way for people to pay. But I guess it's also, I like the way you said that. It sort of rounds out the offering. And, at the end of the day, it does have that ability to differentiate. But I think we've done a good job covering that topic, but I also want to throw back to Mr. Daniel to sit back, and when V was discussing this, as he said, it wasn't a business model, but it could be the cherry on top, and then we expanded that to maybe it was the whipped cream and the cherry on top. I'm going to throw that back to Mr. Daniel to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, based on the numbers and just, hearing some of what Jeremy has to say as well today, I think it confirms that. If you're thinking that you're going to add EBT and your revenue is going to skyrocket, that's just not the case, it seems. It is that cherry on the top, or it's just that additional boost. But more importantly, maybe it's that stickiness with your customer, right? You can offer a service to your customer and you feel like you can be more inclusive because you're offering another way to pay. And from a community perspective, now if you have kind of those people who are, disadvantaged or have EBT, that's just another path that they can use. And you are building your payment system around the customer base that you have, right? Not isolated just to one way to pay or another way. You're creating more ways to pay. So, Jeremy, if I can ask, this is kind of the laundromat use case. Is this kind of what you see across the industry just in general? Is this like rough numbers? Because I think that as a laundromat owner, the question you're asking yourself is, hey, yes, EBT at a laundromat makes maybe partial sense, but is that kind of industry wide where these very low percentages?
Yeah, absolutely. If you own a grocery store, it makes total sense, right? Or a bodega, another small shop, or corner store, convenience store. All of those where you have EBT SNAP capability makes total sense to do that. But if your goal is to only accept TAMP, you just have to be aware what the impact is.
Excellent. No, I think that's very good. And yeah, just in closing of this podcast, like, just circle back originally when we had the other podcast with V with the laundry gurus, really the question was like, should you offer EBT at your laundromat? Do laundromat owners understand what EBT is? So I think dive into this conversation is really like when you make the decision for EBT, go through the proper steps, make sure you have the right education, make sure you have the right equipment. So just in closing, Jeremy, if I talk to a laundromat owner, like pretend I am a laundromat owner, what things should I be really thinking about before I offer EBT? And then what equipment or devices that do I need to implement that's outside the laundry boss or what we have today?
Right. So again, look at your market, look at your client base. Even if there was a way to survey your customers, if you have attended to find out, do these people have EBT cards in their wallets? And if they do, are they also receiving TAMP, temporary assistance for needy families? If that's the case, then it could make sense to go this route. But again, when you go this route, you have to have the right equipment, as you mentioned, Daniel, which is a card reader that has EMV capabilities, right? The chip or tap and PIN-debit acceptance. So you can't just tap or dip the card. You have to actually enter your 4-digit PIN to accept the transaction.
Excellent. And that's the new feature that we just launched with Laundry Boss. So we have the EVP or EMV capability, and we'll soon have the pen capability as well, right? Or
We
some,
We already have it.
We have the PIN debit capability, and we are currently providing EBT services for Laundry Boss customers out there in the real world. So again, and also for the people who don't want to accept EBT, we've helped Laundry Boss upgrade to EMV and tap to pay capability as well. So, I've done this myself. I've left my wallet at home and I only have my cell phone in my pocket. Great. I can use Apple Pay, Google Pay, and continue on my way.
well, that's the beauty is that device now not only just offers EBT now, but also offers tap to pay, which now opens up Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, etc.
All of it. Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, fellows, Jeremy, thank you for hopping on the podcast. In closing, Jimmy, I know we have a couple of things coming down the pipeline, future podcasts. Can you give us a little teaser or a snippet of what's coming down the line?
I can. We're going to have another guest coming up next week. We're going to meet the CEO of Laundry Boss. That's a gentleman named Jim Gardy. Jim is our our CEO, but he's also one of our lead technologists. And what I've asked him to do is to focus on security in the laundromat. In this case, talking about data security, and more specifically, we're going to talk about Bluetooth and there's a lot of different of our competitors out there that are using Bluetooth as their technology for interacting with machines. We do not use Bluetooth. That is not in any way, shape, or form our technology. We choose something completely different. But I've asked Jim to go into some detail about why we do not think Bluetooth is the right technology, and that we think it's more of a consumer grade technology, great for headphones, great for your recorder at home, but not something that you want to be using at your laundromat. So look for Jim Garrity next, and hopefully we'll bring some education and some light into that space, because I think security is something that is not it's overlooked, and it shouldn't be.
Excellent. Well,
We're gonna have to
appreciate you
cut that.
guys. Yeah,
Cut
just
that
one
out.
last piece, and I'll add this just because we have Jeremy on the line. And that's one of the reasons that we're using Paystri. You guys have a very secure payment system. Jeremy, if you can just put a little couple cents on that. I'll cut this up properly, but just tell
Right.
us about Paystri and how you guys have a secure payment system and what your tools are.
Well, speaking of security, Jim, when it comes to pastry and when you're using our tap to pay and dip to pay devices, you're fully encrypted point to point on every transaction. So the system with pastry is 100% PCI compliant, meaning it handles all the payment card industry data security standards at the highest level. So you don't have to worry about, a data breach that would involve credit cards, which could accumulate to hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines if that happened to you.
Daniel, thanks for asking that. We're going to have Jim Gardy, the CEO of Laundry Boss, joining us for our next podcast. And his topic is going to be discussing Bluetooth. There's a number of our competitors out there that use Bluetooth as their technology for interacting with the machines. And I've asked Jim to come in and do a little conversation, have a little conversation, do a little teaching on why we don't think that's the right technology for the laundromat owners and in this space. So looking for him next week.
Excellent. Got it.
Well,
Yep.
so Jeremy, one of the things that I know that we've done with Paystri is that we're taking advantage of a program that you all have called Laundry Guard. And, I believe that's a real differentiator for us with our customers, specifically as it relates to chargeback and also the area of cybersecurity and cyber liability. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Our experience in the laundry industry is what actually caused us to create Laundry Guard, which is a chargeback protection program. We found that over 50% of laundromat owners experience chargebacks, at an average rate of more than 5 chargebacks a year. In some places, significantly higher, 10x on that five of a year. And the cost of those chargebacks can be very significant. Even though someone may only be charging back, $10 of transactions in your laundromat, there's chargeback fees associated with each transaction, which can be 25, 35, and even higher depending on your processor. So we developed a program called Laundry Guard, which actually is an insurance, if you would, against chargebacks. So the Laundry Guard program covers 100% of your chargeback fees and losses associated with any chargebacks up to $100,000 a year. So it mitigates that problem that you have. Now, Laundry Guard also helps protect your business from cyber threats and other various things. So cyber extortion, data restoration, card brand and regulatory fees, defense costs associated with any kind of regulatory action that you may have had with chargebacks or data breaches. So going back to talking about the importance of being PCI compliant and making sure that you have a system that would, if for some reason you got hacked by a bad actor, would protect you from having any raw card data. So cards in the clear, right? Every transaction is fully encrypted. But if you had Laundry Guard in some way, there was some way, which is practically impossible, you are protected from any of those regulatory fees that would happen in that. So it's up to $100,000 for the data security, the data breach, cybersecurity, ransomware, all of that, and $100,000 in chargeback liabilities and fees associated with it as well.
Excellent. Yeah, and Jeremy, if you can describe maybe even a little more detail. So I used to receive the letters, right? You get from MasterCard or Visa or whoever the credit card or the card processor is. They'll send you a big packet, sometimes 8 pages long of whatever is in there saying, hey, this customer's disputing the charge. How does that Laundry Guard work? Is that a component of that? Is that part of the process?
You'll still receive the letter. Laundry Guard's not going to prevent someone from actually issuing a chargeback, and the card issuing bank is the one that's sending the letter in association with the processor, aka us in the background, right? We also have digital tools to help you fight that chargeback, right? That you can go online and submit proof that the transaction happened and fight it. But the nice thing about Laundry Guard is you don't even have to fight it. The fee will come out. You go to the website, you submit a simple form, and those fees are reimbursed. Simple as that. You don't have to go through the hassle of hoping you get your funds back. It's fully covered.
Excellent. And if I could ask the basic question, why is it why does that work? Like, how does Laundry Guard basically reimburse you? Is there a government program or is it some kind of insurance policy? Like, what's the backbone of that?
It's most like an insurance policy.
Okay. Excellent.
Time out. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, we can figure it out.
I mean, look, man, it's a numbers game, just like any other insurance between us, right? So not everybody has chargebacks. And if you're using the right equipment like we are, like I actually double checked when we were with Astoria Bubbles. We have had 0 chargebacks since we moved with the story of bubbles on the device.